Hi there everyone. What I thought I'd do today is a read-in order for one of my favourite comic book series called Soulfire, or Michael Turner's Soulfire, produced by Aspen MLT. It's one of my favourite comic book series. I've started collecting the comics when I was quite young, and today I'm just going to run through the trade paperbacks and the read-in order because it can be quite confusing and quite difficult to find information about online. Just first of all, to give you a brief description, if you've not heard of the series, the art's stunning, and it's what first attracted me to the series, and then I just was hooked by the story. Basically, it follows a world which has run out of magic. It's had magic since the beginning of time, but magic started to dwindle and technology's kind of taken over and taken its place. And this young boy Malachi, is called the Samosara. He's charged with bringing magic back to the world. He's the spark of magic that will reignite its flame within the world and bring it back. And there's this sort of guardian figure called Grace. She's got dragonfly wings. She basically helps guide him through his journey to bring magic back to the world. So that's a brief summary, and I'm just going to crack straight on with the reading order here. So first off is Soulfire Volume 1. This is included in Soulfire, the definitive edition. I don't believe... it says Volume 1. Oh, sorry, it says Volume 1 on the side there. But yeah, it's not too explicit. It's just kind of... yeah, Soulfire, the definitive edition. As you can see, art absolutely beautiful. Because it is the definitive edition, it does contain a few other things as well, but we'll come back to those in a minute because they fall outside the in terms of the production order. Just to mention here, I'm going to go on and mention a lot of the prequels. Personally, I would recommend reading them in the order that they were released, in the order that they came out and were produced, rather than in chronological order. It doesn't make too much of a difference in this instance, but yeah, I just think it's easier if you read things in the order that they were produced, even if they're not chronologically in the right order. So yeah, Soulfire Volume 1 can be found in the definitive edition Volume 1. After that, there is a mini-series known as Soulfire Dying of the Light. This is a prequel series about what happened when magic first started to ebb away from the world. I don't actually own this in English. I own it in Spanish because I bought it completely by chance when I was living in Spain. And it just so happened years later I was going through my comic collection and I was like, oh, brilliant, I don't even need to buy the trade paperback. I already own it, just happens to be in Spanish. So yeah, Muerte de la Luz, Dying of the Light. Okay, now next up, just because I'm going through the production order, Aspen produced a series called Aspen Seasons. These are collections of stories setting various different Aspen universes, and they're just kind of side stories. They don't really affect the overall narrative. You don't have to read them or you'll be confused. They're just kind of little side stories that you can read if you want. So in this spot would be Aspen Seasons Spring 2005, and that exists as an individual only. The Aspen Seasons haven't been collected as a trade paperback yet. I don't know if they ever will because they are largely unrelated, and they're, yeah, like I said, just small stories for various different titles in the Aspen universe. So yeah, but if you do want to read them, this is where it slots in reading order. So that's Aspen Season Spring 2005. I'll pop a picture up there just now. After that, we then have Soulfire Chaos Reign. So this is another prequel series. I believe this is the earliest prequel series, and it details kind of the origins of magic and where that came from. Next up, there's the next issue of Aspen Seasons. That's Aspen Summer 2006. So that would slot in here. Next up then, another one that I don't own in English because when I was looking for it, it just didn't happen at the time. But I did find it in French. I believe it's been re-released now. There's a second printing of it, so I could buy it in English if I wanted to. But this is, just keep it in French as a way to encourage me to keep up French if I want to read this again. So yeah, this is Soulfire New World Order. Now this is not a prequel series. This actually bridges the gap between Volume 1 and Volume 2. So once you've read Volume 1, you don't need to read the other two prequel series that I've just mentioned. You could read those in any order or not at all if you don't want to. I'd recommend them because they're good. But this one kind of, yeah, there is a bit of a gap between Soulfire Volume 1 and Soulfire Volume 2, and this fills that gap. So I definitely recommend reading this after Soulfire Volume 1 and before Soulfire Volume 2. Next up then is, again, another prequel series. So this it details Grace, and it's more about her and the kind of origins of like dark magic and the war between. She's part of a race called the Rethumi, and there's another race called the Sithoru, and they're both winged humanoid creatures with magic powers, and yeah, they basically form a war. This is all about that and the conflict between those two societies. Quite interesting as well. The art style quite different from what you might expect from Aspen, but incredibly beautiful. So I definitely recommend that. But again, you could sort of read it anywhere. It's just a prequel. You don't have to read it between volumes 1 and 2. I just think it's simpler to follow the production order. Next up is Aspen Seasons Winter 2009. This contains 2 stories. One is called Destiny's Child and one is called Sonia. They both centre around characters from Soulfire. What's interesting though is that Destiny's Child is actually included within the definitive edition. Let me just pull it up here. Find it. Yeah, there we go. So Aspen Seasons, Destiny's Child. So yeah, it's included within the Definitive Edition Volume 1, meaning if you own it, you don't need to buy the individual edition or anything like that. You can still read that story there. Also within Aspen Seasons Winter 2009, the story called Sonia is actually included in Soulfire Volume 2, the trade paperback for Soulfire Volume 2. The subtitle for this is Dragon Fall. So again, at the back, you have Sonia's storyline here. It is at the back, but it actually slots in around the events of Volume 1. So I definitely recommend flipping to the back of the book if you are going to buy this beautiful trade paperback. Flip to the back of the book. I would read that first, and then I would go on to Volume 2. I'm not quite sure why they did it in that order, or why they didn't just put it in the definitive edition for Volume 1. Don't know, but either way, yeah, the production order was Sonia, and then after that, Volume 2 from beginning to end. So yeah, this is the trade paperback for that. Next up, we just go straight on to Soulfire Volume 3, so nice and simple in this bit. Just read Volume 2, then go straight on to Volume 3, and that's all included in this trade paperback, subtitled Seeds of Chaos. Now, after that, again, I don't actually own them, so I'll pop pictures up. We have a mini-series called Soulfire Search for the Light, and I actually find it very frustrating that this hasn't been released as a trade paperback. I'm hoping that Aspen will release it, because it does fill a massive gap in between Soulfire Volume 3 and Soulfire Volume 4, and if it's going to come out as a trade paperback, I don't really want to spend money on the individual issues, but it does mar the reading experience of Soulfire Volume 4, because it makes reference to the events that happened in Search for the Light a lot, and it doesn't really, you don't really. Basically, what happens is Soulfire Volume 4 is called Dark Grace, and it basically details how Grace became dark and the path that leads her to darkness. So if you have that link missing, I for that reason, because that link was missing, I didn't enjoy Soulfire Volume 4 as much as I would have done. So yeah, I would definitely recommend, if you can get your hands on the individual issues, do so, or if you want to wait until hopefully one day the trade paperback comes out, you can do that. But yeah, this then is Soulfire Volume 4. So yeah, just kind of standard there. Like I said, there's a gap. It doesn't make much sense without Search for the Light, which is frustrating for me. But yes, this is the trade paperback there. And yeah, subtitled Dark Grace. Like I said, it's a path to darkness. After that then, we go on to Soulfire Volume 5, so no gaps left, it's just straight on from Soulfire Volume 4 to Soulfire Volume 5. This is subtitled Pandemonium, and it's kind of been rebranded a little bit. It says All New Michael Turner Soulfire. I think this is maybe kind of a reboot attempt or something. It was a bit confusing. If you see All New Soulfire, you might think it's a separate series. It's not, it's just Soulfire Volume 5, and it was released, I believe, in 2013-14, so yeah, it's definitely not new by any stretch of the imagination anymore. It's just Soulfire Volume 5. After that, we have Eternal Soulfire. Oh, sorry, before that, actually, we've got an individual issue that I don't own. That is Soulfire Annual Number 1. That was produced in 2014, 2015 to 16. We have Eternal Soulfire. So again, this could kind of be read on its own, but there are some characters that appear in the main Soulfire narrative that are in here. The two are supposed to be not linked. It follows a new character and how she deals with gaining powers once magic has been brought back to the world. But yeah, I would definitely recommend reading it after Soulfire Volume 5, because there are characters from the main Soulfire narrative in this, so it just flows a bit better, and I believe you'd appreciate it a lot more. After that then, we have a turning point in Aspen. They kind of take a leaf out of Marvel and DC's book and decided to do a crossover, even though their other series, Fathom and Soulfire, are normally set in completely different universes. They decided to produce this, which is Aspen Universe Revelations. So this crosses over the two stories, and you very much need to read this. I started reading Soulfire Volume 6, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? Because the other main characters don't seem to know who Malachi is anymore, and they're talking as if he doesn't exist. Didn't understand what was going on at all. And then when I read the back of the Season 6 trade paperback, it says, following the events of Aspen Universe Revelations. So I then had to go and buy Aspen Universe Revelations. I've just got it very recently, so I haven't actually read it yet. But yeah, it seems very much like this completely resets both Fathom and Soulfire Fathom's another series. Yeah, and this kind of resets it. So you need to read this before you read Volume 6 to be able to understand it. So that's Aspen Universe Revelations. And then, just as I've been mentioning, we then have Soulfire Volume 6. Again, they've kept the all-new Soulfire. Don't understand why, but they have. So yeah, this is subtitled Future Shock. And this is the 6th volume. So those are all the trade paperbacks that have currently been released. Afterwards, we have Aspen Universe Decimation. Again, I haven't read this. I believe the trade paperback is coming out later this year. I hope it is. If not, it hopefully will be early next year. I imagine that follows the event of Aspen Universe Revelations, and also since Volume 6 of both Fathom and Soulfire were released before it, I imagine it may lead on from them, and it may need to be read before Volume 7. At the moment, I don't know though, as I don't own it. It hasn't come out as a trade paperback, it's just individual issues and I plan to wait for the trade paperback. And then currently being produced is Soulfire Volume 7, so just individual issues there at the moment. So yeah, great series. If you want to get started with it, I highly recommend it, but hopefully this video will make it a bit easier for you to follow and know which order you should read everything in. Thanks for watching.